Hello, welcome to Chantel's Homeschool. I'm Chantel, I am a mom of 7, and I am currently homeschooling 4 of my children. Today I wanted to talk to you about Saxon math and the good and the beautiful math. And I want to share the differences with you between them. As I shared earlier, my older two, my 11-year-old and 14-year-old, were using the good and the beautiful math, and we recently switched to Saxon. And I kind of wanted to explain in more detail why we did that. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So one thing I want to make sure that I emphasize is I am not saying the good and the beautiful math is not good, because I think it is an excellent math course. And I'm not saying that Saxon math is better than the good and the beautiful math. I am just going to tell you the differences between them and perhaps why we switched, mainly because it just didn't fit my kids right now. I love the good and the beautiful math. I love Saxon math. I don't play favorites. I use them until they are no longer working, and then we find something that does. So first I'm going to talk about Saxon math. Saxon math was created by John Saxon. He didn't see the type of math that he felt would be good, and so he created his own. He actually was a professor, and he saw that many children, but older kids who were coming into college didn't know their math, and they were having a hard time doing this, and so he created this. Saxon math is an incremental spiral, and I want to emphasize that because I've heard a lot of people say it's mastery or it's spiral. It is spiral, but it is different than many other spiral curriculums. It is incremental, which means that it is at a much slower pace and it introduces concepts in bite-sized pieces versus a spiral that introduces things and then just spirals around to the review. Saxon is incremental. It introduces the concept. It only does part of it, and then it adds a little bit more each time that it reviews it. So that is one major difference, and I see a lot of people are confused on that, so I want to make sure that that's clear. With Saxon, there is a textbook. There is a test book. This has your tests. The other thing that it has is a homeschool packet. The test forms and the homeschool packet has all of that in it that you need. As for the lesson itself, I'm going to flip around and show you the inside of this so you can kind of see how it works. So this is Saxon Math 7-6, which means it is for average 7th graders or advanced 6th graders. How a lesson works in the Saxon Math. So how a lesson works in Saxon Math is it has this little box. This is called a warm-up box. We don't do any of this. This is what my husband, a high school teacher, calls a bell ringer. This is so public school teachers can have time to get their classroom ready and wait for late students to come sit down. So we don't do this. The only thing we do is this facts practice here. You will find this here inside of your test forms book, actually. And it has these. It has right here which one they're supposed to do. And as you can see, there are quite a few problems. When my kids have struggled seeing how many are here, I have set a timer for 1 or 2 minutes and just said to get done as many as they can in that time. But that is one way to reduce the load for your child who might be having a hard time. So we do this. My kids read the lesson. These are problems for them to work out, and it tells them here in the solution how they worked it out. It's written to the student. It is easy to understand. After introducing this part of the concept, there are practice problems only on the new concept. After they have finished these, as you can see, there's about 7 practice problems on top of the 2 that were up here. And then after that, these are practice. In the review, it tells you which lesson in this small number that this concept was taught, so that the kids can flip back and see. If they can't remember how to do it, they can flip back and see. There are, in this book, about 30 problems on top of the facts. So let's show you another lesson so you can see. Again, we skip this. This is for public school. The only thing we do is this, and this is actually key to the program. And then my kids read the lesson. If they are using my math assistant, they still have them read the lesson, and then they watch the instructional video on my math assistant, and they do the problems. It takes my children in this level anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to complete this. After lesson 10, there is a test. Following that, there is a test every 5th lesson. Let me show you what the tests look like. After every 5th lesson, there is a test. There are 20 questions on the test. My kids love the tests because they're shorter than a regular day. It is very important not to skip the tests. The tests do not review new concepts. It reviews concepts 5 lessons and prior to the current one that they're doing. So if this is to be completed after lesson 90, it reviews lesson 85 and previous concepts. This is to make sure that they retain what they are learning and making sure that they understand concepts long term, not just quickly for the test. So that's a look at Saxon math on the inside. As you can see, it's very simple, black and white, no fuss, no muss. We use my math assistant because some of my kids have appreciated that instant feedback and grading, and it's taken some of the weight off my shoulders. Some of my kids use it, some of my kids don't, but I've always appreciated their teaching videos. We've used them with all 3 of my older kids, and now I'm using it with my 4th and 5th child. So we enjoy my math assistant. Something that I think is very important to know about Saxon math is that there are 30 problems of review. A lot of people will do every other one. They'll do odds or evens. I think it's actually really important not to skip and do odds or evens. The reason is because all of those problems are carefully considered by the author, John Saxon. He carefully considered each one. And while there might be 2 of a very similar problem, typically the first problem is easier and the second problem is more challenging. If you're skipping odds or evens, your kids are skipping that more challenging problem or the more simple one, and they're gonna have a hard time. We actually, my oldest, I had him do every single problem and every single test, and he scored very well on his SAT. He got a 94% on his math. My next son was having a hard time, and it was taking him a long time to do the math. So I said, let's just do every other one and we'll skip the tests. He has not done very well in the math. And so I found out very quickly that doing every single problem is very important to Saxon math. Do not skip every other problem. While some parents may say that it works, often that's hard to gauge. 1, their child might be gifted at math. 2, they might be saying that now on some forum that you read, but what will they say 5 years later? What will they say 2 years later when their child goes to take the SAT or ACT? You don't know. So I would just encourage you to try to do every single one. If you have to split lessons into days, then do it. But that is my advice with Saxon math. So now let me show you the good and the beautiful. Again, I am not saying that one is better than the other. I am just sharing how they both work and how they are actually very different from each other. They both are spiral, but their spiral is completely different from each other. I mentioned that Saxon is incremental. The good and the beautiful is not incremental spiral. This is not your typical spiral math program in my experience. We have used Christian Light Education, we have used Horizons, and we've used Saxon, all 3 of which, and Abeka. I forgot about Abeka. And Abeka, all of them have a more similar spiral, except the good and the beautiful is vastly different from all of those. So while it is spiral, I would say that it is not spiral like any of those curriculums. In the good and the beautiful math, there are 120 lessons, plus I think it's 3 assessments. you're going to want the answer key, whether in book form or on PDF. You're going to want it. The other thing that it has you do is something called mental math. Each day has a problem with mental math and then a kind of a fun story that goes along with it. I'm going to flip around and kind of show it to you and then talk about kind of how it works. All right, let me show you inside The Good and the Beautiful Math. They like you to start with the mental math book first, so I am going to show you that. Each lesson, it has a very short mental math problem. Kind of the nice thing about this is that you can fold this in half and your student will see this side and you will see the answers on this side. So you can hold it like this, reading the back, and your student seeing the front. So you can easily see the answers. Sometimes in the mental math, there's a sticker and there's stickers in the back. So the stickers in the back, you will add on the grid where the problem says on C2, and then it'll build a picture. There is also a story, and it'll tell you when to read this story. So that is the mental math book. You start with this. We have actually not used this. Then in The Good and the Beautiful Math, let's go ahead and open this up. In The Good and the Beautiful Math, there is a free video lesson, and you will watch it, and this is where they will complete their problem from the video lesson. There's also a mini lesson, so I can go back if I don't watch the video with them and see what the lesson taught quickly. Then there is a practice. This is all practice based on the lesson. As you can see, it is a maze. They had to follow a certain path. And that was it for that lesson. That lesson had no review. So let's go ahead and show this one. Again, the video lesson. And this is where they do the practice problems in the video, a mini lesson so you can understand the lesson. And then there is a practice problem. The practice problems are all on the video lesson concepts. This is still practice of the new video, and then there is a short review. Let's skip farther in. So again, a mini lesson. Sometimes there is not a video. So for example, it says here, no video lesson. So they're just going to read it and do these problems. These are the practice on this lesson. And then there's often a fun game. So here's another lesson. They do a video lesson. This is for where they will practice the concepts in the lesson, and then a mini lesson so you can help them understand it. And then these are the practice problems of the current video, and then this is the review. Farther in the book, so just so you can kind of see, again, the new lesson, the practice problems, more practice problems on the theme. This is a fun addition to do practice problems, and then a short review. And it just continues on like that. Sometimes there are things you need to cut out in the back to use with different lessons, and then this is what an assessment looks like. This is the final assessment. They usually do the purple, and then the orange is if they miss it, you can do it the next day. So with The Good and the Beautiful Math, it is a spiral program like Saxon or Rebecca or Horizons or Christian Light. However, in my experience, the spiral kind of stays within each unit. So there's about 3 units in The Good and the Beautiful. And to me, it has seemed like the review stays within each unit. So the concepts taught in Unit 1 kind of are reviewed in Unit 1 and not as much in Unit 2. There is a little bit of review, of course, but it doesn't seem to flow over throughout the whole course. Concepts from Unit 1 aren't always reviewed in Unit 3, but they will be in the final unit assessment. At least that is my observation, because it does have the mental math book. We completed it for a little while, but the math was taking so long that we stopped. Also, there are quite a few practice problems in The Good and the Beautiful Math 5, and a lot of people will skip half of them. We didn't at first until it got about halfway through the Good and the Beautiful Math 5. And after really looking at the problems, I noticed that they were not like Saxon. Saxon math, as I mentioned before, you really don't want to skip because they're similar problems, but one is usually more challenging. With the Good and the Beautiful, they are all very similar problems, and one isn't necessarily more challenging than the next. And so within each practice, I made sure my kids did several of each in each practice section, because sometimes there's 5 different ways to practice the new concept. And so they didn't just pick 1 or 2 of the ways, they did all 5, but they would do maybe 3 or 4 problems in each one. Hopefully that makes sense. The reason why I had my children switch is one of my 14-year-old is our foster daughter who we're hoping to adopt. And she was having a hard time with the review in the Good and the Beautiful. She has moved around a lot to a lot of different homes and didn't have a very strong math background. And so the Good and the Beautiful worked great for level 4 for her. She loved all the projects, she loved all the art, and you could see from the sample I showed you, it was beautiful and fun. This year, as she's gotten a little older, she did not appreciate all the fun stuff in the Good and the Beautiful as much. And as I mentioned before, there isn't a strict review plan like in Saxon, and so she was having a really hard time remembering the things she was learning. And having had experience with Saxon before, I went ahead and just switched her. I have all the books, and so it was an easy switch, and she is doing much better. She has started saying she enjoys math again. So just because something's beautiful and fun doesn't always mean kids love it. On the other hand, my 5th grader, who is 11, he's always been very advanced at math and done very well with it. However, he is a very slow thinker. He gets every single problem usually right within a 96 to 99%, sometimes 100%. Like very rarely does he get below that. He usually gets them all right. But because he is so precise, the Good and the Beautiful was starting to take him 2.5. One day it was 3 hours long, and he was not doing every single problem. He has a little bit of ADD, and all of the beautifulness of the Good and the Beautiful was distracting him a little too much. And so switching him to Saxon, he has been finishing his math in an hour, sometimes 45 minutes. And he is doing very well, and he's growing and thriving with it. So I am not saying the Good and Beautiful is not good. I think it's an advanced, wonderfully logical curriculum. I think they explain the concepts very well. But for my children, for 2 different reasons, we had to switch programs. One, because she needed more systematic review, and the other because his attention, he could not focus because the Good and the Beautiful is so fun and beautiful. It distracted him more than it helped him. I hope that this was helpful. I am not saying, I want to be clear because I see a lot of videos saying, oh, we switched from the Good and the Beautiful because it's a terrible curriculum, and I definitely don't want to do that. I think the Good and the Beautiful is a solid math program. It just, for different children, they have different needs, and so we switched to Saxon. I've also seen people who do not like Saxon because it is black and white, it is boring, and it is just to the point, and it doesn't work for some kids, and that's fine too. I switched to Saxon because I already have it, and I had a strong belief in what John Saxon taught, and so I wanted to follow up with it. And so far, it has worked for all 3 of my older teenagers, and it's working for these 2 as well. So that is why I switched. They are both excellent programs. I'm curious to hear which one you're using, or if you're using another curriculum and how it's working for your family. It's so wonderful that there are so many different options. When I was homeschooled, my family used either Abeka or Saxon, and there really wasn't very many other options back then in the 80s and 90s. There just, there wasn't a lot of companies, and there wasn't a lot of homeschoolers, and whatever was there, you didn't hear about it because we didn't have the internet. I know one day my dad came home super excited because he had found a math program that he really was excited about. It was called Mortensen Math. If any of you old homeschoolers have heard of it, it kind of reminds me of Math UC, but it was a little bit different. But it had blocks very similar to Math UC. But my dad was excited about that. So some of my younger siblings got to use that for grades 1 and 2 because they didn't have very many out. And I don't know if they ever came out with more, but that's all we ever had. But it's just wonderful in today's world that there are so many options. You have just so many homeschool math curriculums to choose from, and they are all good. I don't think any of them are bad. You just need to find the one that fits your learner for the type of learning that they are and the one that they do. The best curriculum is the one that gets done. I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you later. Goodbye.